It's time to do a tier list on almost every single 4K 240Hz OLED that's come out because yes, I reviewed almost all of them. Now, I will have all those reviews linked in the description below, as well as affiliate links to every single one of the OLEDs that I'll be talking about today in the description below. So if you're interested in any of these, be sure to use that for your convenience, and it does give a kickback to the channel. But in any case, with that out of the way, let's start off with the most anticipated QD OLED, and that's got to be the MSI MPG 321URX. Now, this one's highly anticipated because not only does it have those 4K 240Hz OLED specs and the infinite contrast ratio, as well as the super fast response times that OLED is known for, and of course, how could we forget that all the QD OLEDs are going to have the best color possible in HDR, but this one is actually one of the lowest price options, which is why people are so excited about it. In fact, this thing comes in at $950, far lower than the vast majority of them that are going to be over $1,000 typically, although I do think they have started to fall in terms of price. And because that price is so low, and it does come with actually a ton of features. In fact, let me read off a couple of these for you. Not only does it come with HDMI 2.1, but you also get KVM. You can shrink your screen. It has a display stream compression switch, Type-C 90-watt power delivery, and of course, firmware updates. And on top of all of that, it has some pretty good accuracy out of the box as well. So considering its performance and its price, I think it's got to go into A tier. Why not S tier? Well, let's talk about that right now with the ASUS PG32UCDM, and I'm going to spoil it right now here, guys. This is an S tier monitor. Now, why is this an S tier monitor and this one isn't? Well, not only does it have all of the benefits that we just went over that the MSI has in terms of the picture quality, but it also has a ton of features even more than the MSI variant. And it recently got a firmware update, which does allow the HDR performance of this to be a little bit better than the MSI, as not only will it look like it's just as bright typically, especially in full screen type of brightness scenarios, high APL, but it can actually extend into 1000 nits while retaining accuracy, whereas I've yet to see another monitor that can do that thus far. The HDR 1000 modes on all the other monitors do significantly dim the screen, so that's a huge advantage for the ASUS. And in terms of the features, it has HDMI 2.1, it has KVM, Dolby Vision, it has a display stream compression switch, it has black frame insertion, that's a huge one, it has uniform brightness, it has Type-C 90-watt power delivery, picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture, and of course, firmware updates. So this has just a ton of features, and it's overall an excellent monitor. And get this, you can white balance an SDR. Next up, we have the MSI 321UPX. This is basically identical to the MPG model, except for it doesn't have nearly as many features, and it does come in $50 lower. By the way, this one is $1,300. So it does come in at a higher price than the $950 here. So hey, for some, this could end up being S tier because of that price. But in any case, let's get back to the 321UPX, the MAG model from MSI. Again, very similar to the MPG. However, this one, the major downside was it did not have firmware updates. Apparently, it can now do firmware updates, and for that reason, at $900, I'm kind of torn between A and B tier, but I'm going to slot it into B tier because it really doesn't have too many features. Of course, great OLED, but just not quite to the same level. And by the way, this is a tier list in a vacuum. All of these monitors are the best monitors you can buy today, so we're really getting granular with our tier list today. Next up, we have the Alienware AW3225QF. This had a ton of problems on launch. However, I do believe it is now shipping. I could be wrong here, but I think it is shipping now with the firmware updates that do fix almost all of its problems. Again, this is going to be very similar in terms of performance to all the other ones visually. However, it's going to have its own advantages and disadvantages. The big determining factor with this one is that, yes, it does come with a slight curve, and it does also have Dolby Vision like the ASUS as well. Now, whether or not Dolby Vision is a boon or a curse is going to depend on if you're using a console or Windows, because if you're just gaming on Windows, you probably don't even want Dolby Vision. You'll want to disable it. However, it can be really nice for other hardware or for movies. However, much like the MSI models, I wasn't able to get this to be quite as accurate in SDR as I could with the ASUS. The ASUS also has the better HDR mode, and it also does come in at a higher price than the MSIs. Now, originally, it was around $1,200. Now, today you can find it for $999, and to be honest with you, after all of the updates, after everything they've done to this, this is a tough choice between B and A tier. I think in its current state, I'm not a huge fan personally of how plasticky and kind of cheap it feels. And I think for that reason, it's just barely going to slot into B, but the highest B that I can give it. This could easily be an A tier monitor. If you want a curved monitor, this is just so excellent. What a great monitor today after those firmware updates. But now let's move on to Gigabyte. This is going to be one that everybody's very interested in, the FO32U2. Now, this one comes in at around $1,100. This is not the DisplayPort 2.1 version. However, it does have its own features and reasons to buy it. I actually found this one to overall just slightly be the brightest OLED that I've measured for these 32-inch options. However, we're talking about pretty small amounts. It is possible that could be down to luck of the draw, but I'm pretty confident it will be one of the better options. And I didn't have any issues with this monitor. I also didn't have any issues with either the MSIs as well, so that's excellent to see there. And in terms of where we're going to put this, well, let's go over some of the features to figure that out. Now, it does have HDMI 2.1, it does have KVM, it does have shrinking of the screen, and it also, of course, does have firmware updates. So it does have the basic features that you would expect. By the way, every single one of these monitors, the QD OLEDs anyway, will come with 3-year warranty plus burn-in. So don't be worried. You're going to be covered for a long time with any of these options. They're all going to be great choices. However, this one, I think I'm actually going to slot it into A tier. I really liked it when I reviewed it. Not quite as much as the MSI, I don't think. And this one also does lack the white balance support in sRGB as well as HDR mode, so that kind of sucks. But overall, it is very good for $1,100. Just a little bit in terms of value, not as good as the MSI, but I do like it more than the Alienware. But now let's talk about the FO32U2P. This is basically identical to the FO32U2 in almost every way, except for it actually has DisplayPort 2.1, and that's really nice because that means you will not have display stream compression issues on this monitor, assuming you pick up an RTX 50 card, which, assuming that has the full 80 gigabit DisplayPort 2.1. There are no graphics cards on the market today which can support the full bandwidth required to have a DSC-free experience, which does mean you're going to run into some issues with NVIDIA cards, such as long Alt-Tab times on full-screen applications. Ideally, this will eventually fix that. However, although this is a great monitor, and by the way, this does come in at $1,300 right now, I did have a few issues over DisplayPort with certain graphics cards, so that was a bit of a problem. Oh, also I wanted to mention the MAG. Another reason why it's lower B tier is because the cords are impossible to hide and they really stick out, whereas the rest of these, you can hide them. It's not always super great looking, but you can mostly hide them. This one, not so much. Anyway, back to the FO32U2P. I did have a few issues over DisplayPort, none over HDMI. By the way, it does come with HDMI 2.1 KVM support. You can shrink the screen. It has picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture, and of course, firmware updates as well. For that reason, I'd like to put it ahead of the FO32U2. However, because I happen to have a few issues over DisplayPort, until firmware update comes out, I'm going to put it like right next to the U2, right behind it. The U2 has a lot better value. It did measure a little bit brighter, and I didn't have any issues on it, so I just feel like it's just that little bit better, but the future-proof potential of this, really excellent. But now we got to talk about the LG 32GS 95UE. Now, a lot of people are very excited about this because you can do 4K 240 Hz or 1080p 480 hertz. Now, yes, the 480 hertz mode can theoretically give you a very, 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 very slight advantage in online gaming. We're talking about a difference of, I think, around like 1 millisecond, roughly, give or take, in terms of lower latency, and you are going to go from very good motion performance with all these to almost perfect motion performance at 480 hertz. However, the overall clarity takes a massive blow at 1080p, and it does look pretty bad overall. I think it even looks worse than native 1080p, so unless you really want to use that mode for competitive gaming, I think most people will turn it on, give it a try, and then never use it again. It would be better if it was 1440p. I think it would be a lot more usable because of scaling. It's just weird. But in any case, aside from that, I have a lot of issues with this monitor. First of all, it came in at around $1,400 at launch. I think you can typically find it around $1,200 now, sometimes even lower. So better now, but still a very high price for a WOLED. The QD OLEDs, like I mentioned, they have great color in HDR. They will get over 100% DCI-P3. LG WOLED cannot do that. It will be far below 100% DCI-P3 in HDR simply due to the, well, limitations of WOLED. Even though it is MLA micro lens array and can boost the brightness a little bit higher actually than all of these monitors, including the ASUS one. But despite that, the colors are nowhere near as bright, and it can end up looking even less bright sometimes than these because it's been so far nerfed compared to its TV counterpart in terms of the brightness. Now, in terms of the issues I had with this, first of all, it's got a matte coating. Now, it's not as matte, I guess you could say, as other matte coatings, and you'd think that would make it look better, but it actually just makes it look more oily and distracting. For me, you gotta either go full gloss or full matte. Any and all matte is gonna look really bad. It's gonna look grainy, it's gonna look oily. You can have it look more grainy or more oily than others, or less, but regardless, it's gonna look bad. It's varying degrees of bad. Or you just go glossy, and you can have an anti-reflective treatment on the glass coating. That's fine, as long as you get the clarity and the lack of grain that comes with gloss. Gloss coating is far superior. It's not even close. Every single other industry uses glossy watches, phones, TVs because matte looks really bad. Everybody knows it. And so, yes, it does make the picture, it harms the picture quite a bit on the LG. It looks a lot worse because of the matte. It's very unfortunate, but that's not the only issue. Even if you don't care about that on launch, it had a ton of problems. It couldn't track EOTF HDR properly. It was crushing shadow detail like crazy. They did mostly address the shadow crushing issue, but it still happens. To my eye, it was definitely worse when it comes to shadow detail than the QD OLEDs. The viewing angles were pretty good overall, definitely a lot better than traditional WOLED, but not quite as good as these. Uniformity, not quite as good as the QD OLEDs. It also still, to this day, even on the latest firmware, tracks EOTF absolutely horribly in the most bright mode that you can put this in HDR. And so for all those reasons, I actually overall don't even think this is a very good monitor. It's maybe, if I'm being generous, an average looking monitor. And I gotta be honest with you guys. Yes, it has the specs to make it look good on paper. 4K 240 hertz, up to 480 hertz, everything looks great. But when you actually use it, I think you'll find that it doesn't even look that much better than a lot of monitors. Yes, much better contrast than LCD. Yes, you're not going to have the blooming of mini LED. It has its strengths, but in terms of clarity, in terms of uniformity, and the firmware itself, it's honestly quite poor overall. At least my unit was, and for that reason, maybe I'd give it like a 5 out of 10 on a good day. I just don't think it's even that great of a monitor. It's fine, but it's certainly not worth $1,400. It's a D tier. I'd put it in F tier if I had an F tier. I really don't recommend picking up that monitor, and it's really getting you to the point where you're getting left in the dust by your QD OLED counterparts, and that just simply shouldn't be the case because this does have a better subpixel arrangement. It has its own strengths. It could get brighter if it was unlocked, so this could be a lot more competitive. If this had a glossy coating and it was unlocked and had better firmware, this could honestly be up in S tier, but it's just not good in its current state, and that's a D tier. But in any case, that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my list? Do you think maybe I'm wrong? Again, I'll have all the links to all my reviews of every single one of these monitors. I do very, very in-depth reviews on these things. And of course, I will have affiliate links to every single one as well. I think all these from S to B tier are excellent. Any of them could be S to U, and I could totally see why. Whether it's performance, price, features, they all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And overall, very, very impressed with all of them. If you're not subscribed, be sure to do so, as well as I have a ton of more reviews coming up and a ton of other content. So yeah, make sure you subscribe for everything display related over here on the Display Guy. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.